Hey guys, welcome back to the Be-Cuzz podcast. Today is episode 4?
Yeah, number 4.
And this will be our first true crime that we will be doing.
Yeah, it's number 1 for our true crime. I'm Eric.
And I am Hailey.
And this case that we're going to be covering today is called the Abbotsford Killer. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this will be the 25th anniversary of the events that took place.
We didn't do that on purpose, by the way. Complete coincidence. So this case takes place in Abbotsford, where you lived for a while.
Yeah, so I'm actually from Abbotsford, and he was actually one of our neighbors within, our neighborhood, where we lived in a bunch of oh my gosh. We lived in a town house, and they were all connected, and he lived in one of them.
So the perpetrator, who we will get to learn a bit later, actually lived quite close to Hailey.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So we're going to start this off. And we're going to set the scene. So it's Abbotsford, October 13th, 1995, and it's 5:30 a.m. A young girl by the name of Misty Cockrell, who is 16, stumbles into the MSA General Hospital. She's covered in blood, and nurses find a massive fracture on the back of her skull. Coming out in and out of consciousness, that's a hard word to say.
It is a really hard word to say.
She tries to tell the nurses about her friend, Tanya Smith, that is still outside somewhere.
Okay, and around 7:30 a.m., 2 fishermen were fishing in the Vetter Canal east of Abbotsford to find the body of a young girl. Soon the investigators arrive and confirm that the body belonged to Tanya Smith. Upon initial observations, it was apparent that her cause of death was not an accident and was deemed suspicious. Note, there was seemingly no attempt to hide the body, and the victim's clothes were tossed up in some nearby bushes where they could easily be seen. The DNA sample and a bite mark were found on the victim's body.
What really strikes out as odd for me is that the clothes were tossed up so they could be easily seen in the bushes.
Yeah,
so there was no attempt in hiding the body. At all.
It seems like it seems like something that he just intentionally did and he's proud of. It was just kind of
weird.
Yeah, it's just weird. And the biting, that's vicious.
I mean, like you said, we were talking before you started recording, when people go into the state of mind where they are in the killing, I don't know if it's like killing mode. I don't know if that's the word.
It's like they become possessed basically when they're doing these things.
Yeah.
Like, it's this weird thing when
state
people,
of mind.
They get into this rage. I personally see it a lot with people with higher testosterone. It kind of makes them almost possessed. It's weird.
Yeah.
And they just get into this zone and
do weird things, like licking, biting.
Yeah, exactly.
It's super weird. Now we're going to talk about the attack. At the hospital, police were trying to piece together the bits and pieces of information that Misty could remember. So these are the things that the police could piece together about the attack. On the night of the attack, Misty and Tanya attended a party in the nearby city of Surrey. Note here, the Vetter Canal is in between Surrey and Abbotsford.
Okay,
so
that
right
makes
in
sense.
the middle.
Yeah.
Around midnight, both Misty and Tanya caught a ride back to Abbotsford and ended up at Misty's house. Soon after, they decided to walk to a nearby friend's house to go to a birthday party, as any regular 16-year-old would do.
I'm assuming it was in the weekend. So
yeah.
It'd probably be Thanksgiving weekend.
3 blocks away from their house, a mysterious man stepped out from behind a hedge and forcefully grabbed the 2 girls. He pushed Tanya and Misty through the hedge, and on the other side of the hedge was a parking lot. The perpetrator had a baseball bat, and he started to threaten the 2 girls. For some reason, the man put down the bat, and Misty snatched it and hit the man with the bat. They got into a physical struggle for the bat, but the man unfortunately did get hold of the weapon. Then he hits Misty on the head 7 times before she loses consciousness. Hours later, Misty wakes up, and Tanya and the man are gone.
I can't imagine
the trauma.
Because also she probably had no idea what happened.
Yeah, like where she was.
Yeah.
She was so confused.
Well, she probably had no idea what happened to her friend. And is probably hoping that she's still alive or fine, right? So with the investigation, 4 days after the attack, there was a strange call on the anonymous tip phone line. A male voice was claiming that he drove Misty to the hospital. Due to the nature of the call, the official suspected that the caller was the perpetrator. At the site of the attack, there was very little evidence. There was only an earring from one of the girls. Soon after, another call comes in at the police station, and the man on the other end speaks about the attack in great detail, which is like really creepy. The call was traced to a payphone. Police were dispatched but arrived too late to the payphone. The payphone was examined for forensic evidence, but nothing was found, not even a fingerprint. Well, sorry, my bad. A few hours later, the mystery man makes another call, but this time calls 911. He taunts the police by saying, "Do you think I would be stupid enough to leave fingerprints when I make a phone call?"
Yeah, that's a direct quote.
Oh, that's so creepy. I hate that. 20 minutes later, the tip line rings, and the man continues to taunt the officials. He said that he is looking for his next victim. The call was traced to an abandoned phone booth.
Yeah, and we couldn't find any information, but we assume that the police arrived too late to that phone booth.
Yeah.
It is now October 20th, 1995. The police release a composite sketch of the suspect, and sightings begin to flood the tip lines as the public begins to get worried, as, you know, it's terrifying. There's a killer on the loose.
Yeah.
Rumors begin to spread that there will be another attack on Halloween. And the suspect makes one more phone call from outside a sports bar, but once again, unfortunately, the police arrive too late to make an arrest. And again, there is no evidence at the payphone.
He probably just books it right after he calls. He knows what he's doing. So 1 week later, we're in November now. Police go public with the evidence that they have, which included recordings of the suspect's phone calls.
They don't go, sorry to interrupt, but they don't go public with all the evidence just yet.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember we were talking about that. The name Abbotsford Killer is given to the perpetrator. Known criminals in the area were ruled out by DNA samples. Police bring in another forensic artist to update the composite sketch. After the sketch is released to the public, the police finally get a lead. Finally.
But the fact that, just recapping here, that there was no evidence at the payphone and that what did he say again? Do you think I would be stupid enough to leave fingerprints when I make a phone call? Like, he knew what he was doing. Yeah. This was planned.
He clearly, the one thing that a lot of people have said, that people that kind of knew of him, is that he had a police scanner on him. Mm-hmm. That was something he was kind of, like, he was always listening to that stuff. So I feel like he was fascinated with that. Yeah. And he wanted to be one of those people. We don't know exactly. We don't know how his mind works, but it just seems like
he had a
was
weird
prepared.
obsession.
Yeah. He probably, yeah. It's weird.
Now we're going to fast forward a little bit. It is now Christmas 1995, and the police finally arrest a suspect, and he's held in custody until the DNA test results come back. While he's in custody, they interview him, but investigators begin to doubt that this man was even involved with the case. Soon after, the DNA test clears him from having any involvement.
Okay, and then we enter to January 1996. A new unique approach is taken to the case. Police publish a false news report in the newspaper in an attempt to contact the killer on the police's terms. The false report challenges the killer's ego and plays towards his need for attention. Luckily, the plan did work.
Thankfully. It is now February 17th, 1996. In the early morning, the killer parks in the parking lot outside of a local radio station and calls the station. On air, the killer tells the radio host to check the parked car that is in the station's parking lot.
Oh, this part's so creepy.
I know. Then the killer hangs up. The radio host immediately goes outside and finds a headstone on the hood of a car. And the headstone belonged to Tanya Smith.
Oh my god.
And on the headstone, there were threats aimed at Misty. So, the killer dug up Tanya's headstone, defaced it, and brought it to a radio station.
Just thinking about that makes my heart race, and I can't imagine how sick. Misty felt with that, and defacing somebody's grave, that is dark. Like, you have to be
in a bad place mentally to do that.
You have to be that messed up to do something like that, to disrespect something like that. Mm-hmm. That's gross.
Also, it really shows how much he was craving attention. Like,
yeah,
to call a radio station and do that, It's a weird way to do it. First of all, weird way to ask for attention, but it's definitely
there's something that was going on in his mind.
Yeah.
He loved this.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird. I would love to get in that mind and figure it out. I don't want to think like that, but I would love to know what they're thinking.
Know the reasoning.
Yeah.
I feel like from, things that I've read about this and research that I've done, the vibe I'm getting from him, I feel like he's looking at this more like a game than anything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like a cat and mouse type thing, like a movie, it's supposed to be like a big movie or something.
He's creating his own legacy almost.
Yeah.
And he's creating his own story. He definitely probably followed a lot of other stories, you know what I mean? Like, he probably looked at stuff and created his own. He's like, I want to do this, mess with the police. He's like, how cool would that be?
Yeah, which is so weird. That plays towards how self-centered and how egotistical he was.
Yeah. He was definitely, like I said, he was trying to create his own legacy. That's what blows my mind. It's so
messed up.
I know. So it has been 5 months since the attack. Over the next week, the perpetrator contacted the police 2 more times. One of the calls was a 911 call, and the other was made from a payphone that was only 2 blocks away from the police station.
Yeah.
Instantly, the police were dispatched, and they started to canvass the area. They had missed the killer by 60 seconds.
They're so close. They could have ended it right then and there. But yeah, that's tough stuff.
So 2 days later, the killer throws a wrench through the living room window of a random house. Taped to the wrench was a letter to the police in which he confessed to more crimes, and we're assuming that he might have confessed to local arsons that were happening. And the fingerprint was found on the sticky side of the tape. Other than that, there is no other evidence.
Yeah. So far, we have 3 pieces of evidence. So we have a DNA sample, a bite mark, and a single fingerprint. Which these are great pieces of evidence to have if you have a suspect. But we have nothing.
Yeah.
So there's no way we can attach these pieces of evidence to anyone. During March 1996, there's no contact with the killer with police. So there's 0...
Yeah.
The airwaves are dead.
Yeah, so now we're entering late April.
So now it's late April. A woman named Audrey Teague is listening to the recordings of the killer's phone calls because they release those to the public, and she recognizes the voice, and she begins to suspect that it's her son, Terry Driver. That the voice belongs to Terry Driver.
I can't imagine that feeling, because you would recognize your own child's voice.
Her other children listened to the recordings, and the whole family agreed that the voice was Terry's, and they contacted police. Now, here's some information on Terry Driver. He was 31. He worked for the Abbotsford Printing Company as a pressman. He had a wife and 2 children, and he had a normal outward appearance.
Later, police went to his house and questioned him. He refused a polygraph test and a DNA test and would not submit his fingerprints. So that is...
red flag.
Yeah, right away that's showing there's something up. Under a few conditions, Terry met with the police and agreed to give his fingerprints as long as the samples were destroyed after the comparison was made. Terry did not know that the police had a piece of fingerprint evidence.
So the fingerprint is a piece of evidence that the police held back, which is a super smart move on the official's behalf.
Honestly, that's not releasing all the details helps you in the end.
Now it is May 3rd and it's been 7 months since the attack. The investigators compare Terry's prints to the evidence, and they were a match, and Terry is arrested. Finally.
I mean, if you think about it, some cases take years. This only took 7 months. I mean, that's still...
too long.
Yeah, still too long, but 7 months versus some of them take 20 years to even figure out.
Now, moving on to the trial.
From a psychological evaluation, it was determined that Terry suffered from an obsessive-compulsive condition and craves attention, no restraint.
Yeah.
In interviews, he recounts of the events are unconvincing to the investigators. During the trial, Terry showed no emotion, which, I mean, it kind of explains the way he is. You would expect that. And while sitting there in the courtroom, showing no remorse for his actions, which he was proud of it. He
so
clearly
gross.
was very proud of what he's done. It was shown by the prosecution that Terry closely shadowed the investigation from the very beginning. He was one of the first people to notify the media of the case, and he even attended Tanya Smith's funeral.
Which is super gross. I watched a documentary when doing some research, and at the beginning of the documentary there's some footage of the funeral and them carrying out the casket. And later in the documentary they revealed that Terry was right next to the casket as they were leaving the church.
That is...
Or, I don't know if it was a church.
See, and that's exactly... He's proud of this. He is, and that's why I don't expect him to show any remorse. He's proud of what he's done.
It is now October 17th, 1996, and Terry Driver is convicted of first-degree murder and the attempted murder of Misty. And he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years.
And I'm hoping that he does not get released. There has been issues in the past in the Canadian legal system where people are being released when they really shouldn't be.
Should not be.
The thing with Misty Cockrell, she is still struggling. She went through something very traumatic. She's a very strong person. I can't imagine.
I have so much respect for her.
I know. I can't imagine how she feels. She survived something, but losing your friend, and you would almost feel some guilt and stuff like that would be. Oh man, you're amazing, Misty. You're amazing.
I think that concludes our very first true crime episode. It's probably going to be a little shorter than what our usual episodes are, but
it's a little bit easier that way.
It's a little bit easier for us that way. So thank you for listening, and next week our topic is going to be all about Halloween.
Yeah, that one's going to be fun.
So see you then, and thanks for listening.